Hey guys, welcome to my first tutorial. Today I'm going to be talking about AI animation and how I made this video to apply for a job with Donald Glover in just one night.
Hey Donald, Donald from the future here. So I'm giving you a warning not to hire Byron.
Dude, that's not what we discussed.
Just kidding, bro. Hiring Byron, one of the best decisions he ever made. He's an incredible collaborator and creative partner. Together, you're gonna make some amazing work. They'll push boundaries and touch people's lives in ways you never even thought possible. Trust me on this one. Byron will change your life forever. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep taking risks. Future's looking bright.
And I say I did it in one night, but truly I've been researching and looking into AI since it first started. As soon as Midjourney and DALL-E started coming out, it was just something that really captured my attention and my interest. So this is just the culmination of a ton of research and a ton of trial and error. So why in one night? Well, when I heard about the job openings, they'd already been posted for about a week, and I had to go to Vegas for NAB for 5 days. So when I got back, by my math, there was a couple of days left only before the apply window closed. And so I spent most of Saturday day and night working on it. As of right now, during this recording, the job posts seem to still be open, so I could have had a little bit more time to refine my outcome and finish it up like I liked. But in my experience being a self-learner and teaching myself animation, 3D design, and now a little bit of coding for AI, I figured out that the fastest way to get better is to let go of my perfectionism and just do more. Basically, I just fail fast and try to learn from my mistakes. And that's what this tutorial is going to be all about. I'm going to talk about my process, the programs that I used, all the mistakes that I made, what I would do differently if I was going to do it over again, and hopefully try to find a good workflow that would be ideal for this type of animation. So before we jump in, let's discuss the programs that I used to make this. For a lot of the stuff that I made with AI, I downloaded my own repositories and trained it locally on my machine. There will be easier versions online that are more user-friendly, but that you usually have to pay for. For me, AI is all about open source, so I'm going to concentrate on the free versions of these scripts. That being said, I am a professional motion designer, so I am using some paid apps, but I'll try and give you alternatives. So for example, instead of C4D, dare I say, we could use Blender. So first thing you're going to need is Python and just a little bit of information on how to install that and use it so that you can have Stable Diffusion and a couple of other of the AI repositories installed locally on your machine. I also used Midjourney, which works through Discord. I have a paid version of that, but I believe you could still use it for free. And then on the motion side of things, I use C4D. As I said, you could use Blender instead. And I also use Mixamo, which you will need an Adobe Creative Cloud login to be able to use for free, but you can also find free mocap files online. Oh, and just so that this tutorial doesn't get too long, I won't go into details on how to install and the basic functions in most of these programs, but I will link to really helpful resources that I followed when I was learning. So step number one was replicating Donald Glover's voice. There's a few online tools that claim that you can do this for free. For example, Voice AI was one of them, but when I downloaded the program, it turns out that to train your own, you had to pay a premium fee. So it was time to find a free version. The first repository that I found was Tortoise. A lot of people online have had success with this one. I just wasn't able to make it work. I kept looking and ended up finding this one over here, SO Vids, blah, blah, blah. And I'll link both of these in the description. This one has a really helpful tutorial on YouTube that I followed, which I'll link in the description as well. But if you come to this fork on GitHub, you'll need Python, as I said at the beginning, and you'll either need Anaconda or Miniconda to be able to launch it. You can just download this bat file to install it easy, or you can do a manual installation if you need to. And then here it explains everything, as well as the YouTube video will also explain a lot. If we get started, you can see over here, I've launched Anaconda. And after I installed it as Voice AI. And so I activate that environment. And then I'm going to go through the steps that I see here. The first thing that it shows you is the GUI, but honestly, that was the last step. You're going to go into training here, and you're just going to follow all of these commands one by one. So first you do the pre-sample, the pre-config, all of these. And then once you've trained the model, then you launch the GUI. This is the interface that comes up once you install it. But funny enough, it's also the last step to use because first we need to train the model. To train the first thing that you're going to need is a bunch of samples of the voice that you want to clone. For me, that was easy enough because Donald Glover is pretty famous. So there's a bunch of interviews of him. So I just had to pull down those videos, cut them up, and use those clips. I got lucky and I found a really long interview where it was mostly just him talking. And that was really good material to start training the AI. So I downloaded that. I cut out any of the parts where the interviewer is talking and exported that from Premiere as audio only and brought that into Audition. To train the AI, you're going to need a series of clips that are 10 seconds or less. To make that easier on myself, brought it down into batch process, and then you can go to effects, diagnostics, and you go to mark audio, and this will analyze your audio for silences. You go to scan, and then it gives you all these markers, and then you can use the batch process again to export these as individual clips. Basically, what you're going to end up with is a ton of these clips that you see here, 436. Then I just organized them by length, and I deleted all the ones that were either super long or a little bit too short, and I ended up with about 290 or so of these files. So the instructions on this page are going to be very clear, and also I recommend that you watch the YouTube video that I linked, the tutorial for it. Watch it the whole way through first, and then kind of come and go and do every step. I got a little bit lost trying to do it step by step. You'll see that I have my final clips. These were the ones that I decided were good. They're 294. And then I need to train the model. So for that, you're going to come under training. You actually have two options here, which I forgot to mention earlier. You can either do this all locally using your GPU, or you can do it in Google Colab. If you don't have a good GPU, or if your GPU is just taking too long, the Google Colab will be a good option for this. I have a 3090 in my machine, so for me, it took a little bit to train, but for me, it went pretty well. I'm just going to quickly show you what happens if you go to the Colab. It is a little bit more step-by-step and even a little bit easier. So if you don't really care about doing this locally, I kind of recommend that you try this. You just go step-by-step, clicking on the play button, and it will let you know. And it also has little comments on where to install stuff and all of that. I'm using somebody else's data set. So this is also very helpful if you feel like you're getting lost doing it locally. But I'm going to run through how to do it locally as well, just so that you can see how it's done. So of course, as soon as I tried to do this, I was getting errors on my mini copy and it just wasn't working. But this is a great way to show you how I kind of navigated all these issues that came up. So every time I got an error, what I would do is just copy the whole thing, come to ChatGPT and basically say, I got this error, paste it in here, and ChatGPT will interpret what the problem was and give you a solution. And then you try these solutions, and if this doesn't work, you just tell it, hey, this didn't work. And it will try a different workaround, or it'll try to give you even more context. Don't forget that if at any point you get lost or you have any issues that you don't really know how to resolve, apart from most of these tools having big communities online and Discord servers where you can ask questions, if you need a quick solution, you can just try ChatGPT, and most of the times it will help you through it. So I'm not going to do it here live because these take a little bit of time, but everything is explained here, how to save your files, and then you just run these commands one by one. And I am going to show you what the result of that is. You'll get these two new folders in here, file lists and logs. If we go in logs, this is where your model is going to export. And now it depends on the settings that you put in there. But if you follow the YouTube tutorial, you'll see that you can edit this config, which you actually should. This one is the default that it gave me. But a lot of these numbers, I followed the ones that are in the YouTube tutorial and they worked great for me. Now, one word of caution is I got an error, a safe tensor error when I first started running this, and I thought nothing was happening because the window just stayed still. But I actually tried leaving it for a while and I started to realize that these models were popping in. So just keep an eye on your folder and you should see these start to populate after some time. How long it takes is going to depend on how many clips you have, how many epochs you set in the config, and also on your GPU. Cool. So once you have your models trained, you're going to launch the GUI and you're going to set your settings here. Same kind of deal. I would follow the YouTube tutorial. It was really easy, but basically you're probably going to want to use the last epoch of your model, which will be the higher number. You want to set your config path in here, and then you're going to select your speaker. In here, in these options, I took the pitch and brought it to 0, which is basically auto. So it's going to auto-generate it for me, and that gave you the best result. And then here in File, you would use your voice and give it an output path. Now, the one thing that you probably should play around with are these different prediction methods. I used all of them. So I exported all of my clips. For some intonations, some worked better than others. And then what I did was just select the best pieces from each one. So let me hit infer, which is what's going to make the conversion. And you should hear the result through your headphones as soon as it's done calculating. This is the file that I fed into the AI.
Just kidding, bro. Hiring Byron, one of the best decisions you ever made. He's an incredible collaborator and creative partner.
This is the results that the AI gave us.
Just kidding, bro. Hiring Byron, one of the best decisions you ever made. He's an incredible collaborator and creative partner.
So as you can hear, there's some issues with the audio. There's some wispiness in there. There's some noise that doesn't sound very good. And this could have probably been solved tweaking the training. I've seen results online that came out really good. So the results can be very good. It's just a matter of checking your clips that you're training with and making sure that you run it a few times to just get different results, trying your different epochs and see what works best. Instead, being low on time, I tried to use this to my advantage, coming up with the idea that future Donald was putting a call into the past, and so the connection was kind of broken, and that would explain the distortion in the audio. I did bring the file into Audition, and I did some noise reduction, declipping, and then I also did some modulation to get rid of some of that noise. But in the end, the final result wasn't as crisp as I would have liked. We're done with the voice. It's time to move on to part 2, which is creating our CG puppet. Now this part right here should definitely be easier if you're familiar with motion design and 3D. So we started by going to Mixamo, where there's a bunch of different characters in here to choose from. I chose this guy just because he has facial hair like Donald Glover. And then I chose animations, and I just searched talking, selected a few of these different animations, chose a few ones where they were laughing as well, click download, and save those as FBX. If you don't have an Adobe account and you don't have access to Mixamo, there are other mocap free resources that you can find online that you could probably download. So what I did was download a few different versions of the character talking or laughing, and I dropped them into C4D. I set up a camera to kind of line up my shot how I wanted Donald Glover to show on camera, and then I just strung them together. And I could have done this a little bit better. I could have set each one of these up as a motion system and then use that motion system to make sure that each animation is going into the next one seamlessly. Instead of that, I was just doing this as a test, and I ended up by just using my janky animation in the end, which you'll see how that affected the result later. So I exported these into PNGs with a green screen so that I could change the background however I wanted. I probably could have just done it on a dark background, which is what I ended up using, but at the time I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with it, and I just wanted to keep my options open. Now, something else I could have done here is get an app, for example, like Moves by Maxon to track, say, my face while I'm talking and blinking, and bake that into my character. This was just proof of concept, and so I wanted to go as quickly as possible, but probably moving forward, I would try and set it up like that, because for me, one of the big parts that was missing was the movement being all strung together correctly, and the eyes not blinking at all through the video. Step number 3 was creating my avatar. I went to Midjourney and tried out a few different prompts until I finally got to a point where I liked it. I got an older version of Donald Glover. I really liked this 4th one down here, which is the one I ended up using. It looks older, but not too old. There are a few others that I picked out just in case. I came up with these other options in here. At first, I wasn't really sure how I was going to use these. I just made sure that I had enough options for myself. This one was also pretty cool. And also probably important to mention here, I could have done this with Stable Diffusion so that I didn't have to use another aid app, but I really like the way that Midjourney deals with images, and I didn't want to have to go through the trouble of coming up with negative prompts and kind of fine-tuning that in Stable Diffusion. So this was just an easy way to do this. Okay, so now we have all the pieces that we need, kind of, and it's time to try and bring them together into Stable Diffusion and see if we can actually make this work. For me, as I was doing this, around this time, it's about 10 p.m., and so I'm starting to panic a little bit. Okay, so we're in Stable Diffusion, and the one thing that you just need to make sure that you have installed is one of its extensions, and it's ControlNet. Now, I'm going to assume that you have Stable Diffusion, you kind of know how to use it and how to install different extensions, but if you don't, I'm going to drop a link to a YouTube channel by Olivio Saracas, one of the most helpful channels I found about AI, especially Stable Diffusion, and a lot of other goodies in there. He has great tutorials for you to check out, and they go from total beginner to a little bit more experienced. But in case you do know Stable Diffusion, but you don't happen to know what ControlNet is, I will give you a little bit of a tour. So first thing you should always do with Stable Diffusion is make sure that you have the latest extensions installed. And if you don't, well, then you just click apply and restart. For our purposes, we want to be in image to image because we have all of those puppet renders. We want to overlay the avatar of older Donald Glover onto those motions. Let me show you a little trick here for Stable Diffusion in case you didn't know. I'm going to drop one of my exports from my tests in here because I don't remember what prompt I use, what negative prompts, and what settings I set. So I can just drop a result in here and then click this blue little arrow, and it'll just populate from the metadata for me everything that I kind of put in here. So that's a little trick for you. Now it's time to do some tests. I started by dropping in one of my puppet renders in here and then going down to ControlNet, dropping in the image of the avatar that I liked. The thing with ControlNet is that it helps you control the result that you get from Stable Diffusion. It has a few different models that you can use. In this case, for me, I'm going to use the Canny model. What Canny basically does is that it will kind of draw lines from your image and use those to guide the result that you get. So I'm just going to hit generate here. And after baking it, this is the result that I get. Here is the result of the Canny, which I have kind of touched on the threshold a little bit. You should play around with that to see what works best. But basically, we're trying to get to the point where it is drawing on the lines that it's detecting from down here. Now, it's worth mentioning that most of the techniques that I found online talked about doing this with your own LoRa. And the LoRa is just an extra model you can inject into Stable Diffusion, and you can train it on your own machine on either a character or a style. And thinking back on it, it was probably going to be the way to go. But in my case, Donald Glover is a celebrity, so Stable Diffusion kind of knows how to draw him just by saying older Donald Glover, or before I also tried old man Donald Glover. Those were some of the prompts that really helped me kind of like transform my puppet into what we're looking for here. Now, to train my own LoRa on this, I would have needed several images that were consistent. Midjourney had given me some good options that I could have used to do this, but then I would have had to go into writing the captions for it, and then training the model, and then doing more testing. And so instead, I just went ahead and did it this way. If you're trying to do this on your own, I would look into LoRa's, and I would look onto creating your own LoRa for your character. So really, what I think I would have liked is to be able to use ControlNet for the puppet, and instead of using the canning method, I could have used the open pose method, or the open pose face, which I did do some tests on this to invert it. But the problem is that I have about 900 frames, and ControlNet at this stage doesn't have any way to batch process stuff, so I had to do it the other way around. But once I was happy with my prompt, my negative prompt, my steps, and my sampling method, and all of that, you can just keep messing around with these sliders, test what works for you, find a seed that works for you. Once you found the right seed, make sure to lock it in here. Then all I had to do was just go into the batch render, put my input directory here, put my output directory, hit generate. So this took about 45 minutes in total, which gave me time to go watch the finale of The Mandalorian, which, by the way, I really loved. And at the end of it, I had these exports. As you can see, there's not that much consistency in the character. That's where using a LoRa would have come in. And it's also kind of jumpy. And that's where using the motion system within C4D would have also been really helpful. But we do have a video. The only problem we have now is that the mouth doesn't move. So for that, we need to use a different AI. So when I was planning for this video, I knew about this tool called DID, and I thought I could just use it to upload an image and then sync the lips moving to a specific audio. Of course, as soon as I started trying to use it, they told me that I couldn't use the image of a celebrity unless if I paid them quite a hefty amount. So instead of that, I had to go find a workaround. If there's a paid version online that you could use, there is always going to be a free version in a repository somewhere that you can install on your local machine or run on a Google Colab. So that's where this repository came in. And instead of installing it on my local machine, I did run this on the Google Colab so that I didn't have to deal with the whole installation process, which, let's face it, every now and then doesn't go as planned step by step. So this was very easy. You just set it up on your Google Drive. And what I will tell you is anytime that you go to any of these, first make sure that you read through the whole thing, because the first thing that I saw here was, oh, lip sync YouTube video. I have to upload my video to YouTube to be able to read it. And I had to go through that whole thing. And then my video was short. It was only 30 seconds. So it came in as a YouTube short, which is not a URL that this repository will read. So then I had to add it before and after to make sure it was over 2 minutes. Anyway, it was a mess. So yeah, just make sure that you read everything, because if instead of doing it this way, I would have just gone down here, I could have seen lip sync on your video. This was very easy. All you had to do was click here to run it and then upload your own video. You select your audio and upload it as well. And then you just run the AI and it will analyze the audio and the video and it will give you these images where the mouth is actually moving to the audio itself. And let me show you what that looks like. Now the lips are moving in sync with the audio that we have, and they're a little bit inconsistent, and that's because of the source images. But also the other problem that we have is that it's really low res. You can see there's a bunch of artifacting all over the place, so this wouldn't really be usable. Time to bring this into the next program. So we're getting close to the end, I promise. So we're going to take this video that we exported from Wave to Lip into After Effects, fix the mouth issue. So you'll see that what I did in After Effects is that I brought that video in. You can see it's very low res. Then I tracked a mask around the mouth and set that to add so that everything else gets subtracted, and then just put that on top of my normal puppet renders. And now we have a higher res version of the puppet or the avatar moving around and the lips, but the lips still look pretty janky and low res. So to fix this, we're going into Stable Diffusion one more time. I exported the masked around mouth on top of the higher res version of the avatar to PNGs as usual. And then what I can do, Stable Diffusion has this tab over here called Extras. You can just drag in your image and you can see that the size of this image is 288 by 512, which matches what we had here because it's better to do these at a lower resolution from Stable Diffusion than try to export anything bigger. And then you just select your upscaler. This one is probably going to be the best one. And you set the size that you want it to, resize it 4 times up, and you click generate. And once that's cooked, the resulting image is now high res 2K. Same process as before. Go to batch from directory, choose your input directory, choose your output, run it all. Back in After Effects, now I have my high res renders of Donald Glover. We just have to deal with the green screen and with, your typical kind of like flicker issues. Now, when you look at any tutorial online, it's going to tell you to use DaVinci Resolve to deflicker any of your Stable Diffusion animations. The only issue is that the deflicker effect only comes in the studio version. We didn't have access to that, so instead I kind of faked it in After Effects. What I did is I took all my high-res images and cut the frame rate by half. That's why you can see that now I have 450 as opposed to 900. I duplicated those images, offset the top layer by 1 frame, and set the opacity to 50%. That kind of created a sort of blending that, for the time being, kind of served as a sort of deflickering and smoothing of the video. I brought all of that in here, and I started overlaying some effects. Since the concept of the video was to use the audio that didn't sound that good, and my video was kind of jumpy, I wanted to give it this look of it being broken up. There's a background one where I gave it all this blue kind of tint, and I offset that so that when I had the next one on top, they didn't totally match up, and I gave an even more broken look to the next one. From there, you can see that I started adding other effects. Then I added another layer that just had a little bit of like scan lines on it. And then one last layer over here that had these other like big chunks taken out at times. And then laying all of that together and adding some extra sci-fi elements on top so that it looked futuristic is what gave it the final look. Then I cut that in with my video presentation for the application. This was the final result.
With AI lately, that I got all the way to being able to put a call in with somebody from the future who I think you might want to hear from.
Hey, Donald. Donald from the future here. So I'm giving you a warning not to hire Byron.
Dude, that's not what we discussed.
Just kidding, bro. Hiring Byron, one of the best decisions he ever made. He's an incredible collaborator and creative partner. Together, you're going to make some amazing work. They'll push boundaries and touch people's lives in ways you never even thought possible. Trust me on this one. Byron will change your life forever. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep taking risks. Future's looking bright.
I hope all of that wasn't too much. I tried to go into as much detail as I could without getting lost in very introductory issues. If you have any questions, definitely feel free to drop them in the comments or send me a message. I will try to answer as best as I can. I am still learning how to do most of these things, as I think we all are. AI is a very new technology, and I'm sure that within a few months, there'll be a program that does all of this with just the press of a button. This is just if you're impatient like I am and really want to create create animations on your own. If you are working on any project with AI animation, or you have any other ideas or know of any other repositories that would work better, definitely let me know. I would love to hear about them. And that's all for me. This concludes my first tutorial. I hope that it was decent. Make sure to follow me on my socials, reach out, send messages, whatever you want. I don't know how it goes. Like and subscribe. I don't know how many of these I will do, but if I learn anything new, I will try and definitely share it here with you guys. Thank you.